We are breaking down the 3 solo podcasting format types or structures: the storyteller, the teacher, and the commentator. You can figure out the best structure to use for your solo podcast show, or maybe pivot to after you hear what they are. Sometimes solo podcasting is thought of as an easier way to just go because you don't need to find anybody. You can just turn on the mic and talk. But I understand why people say that it's easier, because you save time and headaches because you don't have to find a co-host with equipment or schedule guests. Nobody's ghosting you, including that co-host. You don't have to find like a remote recording platform. You can just start with Audacity on your own computer. And all of that stuff is a huge bonus. Now, without a plan, solo hosts can also fall into like rambling or monotony. I sure have. To avoid this, to be successful, you want to have a specific architecture or format style for your show, which is more reliable than like going off a charisma alone. And it's entirely possible to still be very creative within a structure, even a very formalized or rigid one. Now, if you already have a podcast, you might want to pivot your format or more strongly align with one of these structures to strengthen what you're already doing. First structure, the storyteller. The goal of it is to craft a narrative. So in this format, you're forming like a theater of the mind, right, for your listener. They're envisioning this story that you're telling. They're putting themselves in the action. They're seeing the buildings. They're seeing the people, etc. You're doing that more than just like giving a bunch of facts or how-to about the history or the thing that you're talking about. So within this kind of structure, there's sort of substructures or subtypes. Now, one of them is a historical deep dive. So you maybe listened to some of these solo shows. These are like the fully scripted shows. They're ones that focus on, like, they have really high quality scripts. They are focusing on the writing, and they're focusing on the quality of how that writing is being delivered. And this is really important because of the lack of visuals that are available when you're delivering podcasts. You're probably not seeing a video version of this show. This delivery, by the way, it can take a lot of practice, or it can take an existing talent or developed skill set of the host. These shows are relying on the script and the delivery more than, say, sound effects and sound design, but they might have some of that as well. I'd consider a show like Dan Carlin's Hardcore History to be this type of show. Now, another subtype of this category, storyteller, is themed narrative. So this is really common in the folklore or the true crime genre. But the show itself, it stays like in a very specific theme for its narrative. So that's the point. The host is acting as a folklorist or like a really documentarian of this theme. I'd consider a show like Lore, which was also turned into a TV show and a book series. It's within this type, and it's exploring why people believed the story that's being told and the history behind that story. It's a really immersive documentary style of podcast, which is why it's so adaptable to the other formats. The cold open is often used in this kind of structure. So what is this? This is when you start in the middle of the action. Like, this is used in improv scenes all the time for the same reason it works in podcasts and all these other places that you find storytelling. It hooks the audience in right away because you're starting in the action. Like in improv, starting in the action in the middle forces the players in that scene to establish the base reality, the who, what, where, basically really quickly, and create immediate like tension of some sort, instead of starting with like character introductions or, hey, how you doing today? So the next structure is called the teacher. This structure is really good for coaches and consultants who need to establish their expertise quickly or just show what they do. The core function is to just transfer knowledge to your audience. And the structure in many of these kinds of podcasts is more like a classroom in nature. It's dealing with logic and clarity. You might be using stories throughout this structure, but storytelling is more on an as-needed basis to explain a concept. This show falls into this category, as does another show that I've done called Your Improv Brain. And I started off just talking into the mic without a format or a plan, but I learned pretty quickly that just improvising my improv show in that case was not going to work. So I shifted to this kind of format and structure. There are different sort of subtypes in this form as well. So you might do an academic explainer type of podcast. And this structure is really similar to an academic lecture. So you're defining terms, you're introducing thinkers, you are explaining concepts. And you're probably quite familiar with this kind of presentation model if you've, say, gone to college or university. Now, an example of this is the History of Philosophy Without Any Gaps. That's the show names. It's hosted by a professor. And you might also want to check out, there's some history podcasts by Mike Duncan as well. Now, the other style of podcast that you might find in the teacher structure is the framework model. This is really more of a how-to type of show. So this type of show, it provides like a step-by-step system to solve a problem. And it really works because it really puts you as an authority on a topic. And it could even serve as a marketing funnel if you have a business or you have something to market or funnel to. The Think Media podcast, which is really a blend of solo and interview shows, but even the solo shows kind of falls into this format as an example. And this is an important consideration in particular for the how-to. If you plan to illustrate some steps using screen capture or diagrams, you really have to think about how to verbalize those visuals delivering to a podcast. So this structure frequently uses like the thesis of the episode as the hook at the beginning. So you are telling your audience what you're about to teach them instead of using like a narrative story to kind of teach those concepts. You are really delivering an audio essay that focuses on instruction, learning, and how to. The next structure is the commentator. So this kind of format, this kind of structure is entirely based on your own personal perspective. And really, if you are going out there with your unique perspective on a particular subject, it's a really quick way to build up trust with your audience and really a very loyal to you audience. You are setting yourself apart from everybody else's takes and opinions on a particular topic, on that niche, on that category. You are really developing trust with your audience. And I don't like the term thought leader, but it might apply pretty well to this structure. So shows might be delivered in a couple different ways if you're doing a commentator type show. So the first type is a daily news analysis or a very frequent delivered podcast. So a news analysis type of show is a fairly rigid format when it comes to like delivering a solo podcast. You might start this kind of show, or you might hear a show in this category start with a monologue at the beginning and just end with another kind of monologue or spiel. And the main part of the show probably includes some level of news commentary or news clips even that are played. So an example of this kind of show, you can find the Humanist Report, and this includes news clips, and the show is delivered to both video and audio formats. So they're very verbal news clips that are being shown. So another type in this structure is the pure op-ed type of show. So an example of this type of show might be like Bill Burr has one, the Monday morning show, and there are monologue episodes within Ed Zitron's Better Online podcast. Although not delivered to a podcast, Adam Conover's channel also has like these op-ed monologue formats. And those solo episodes could work for an audio only format, but they do fall into this kind of structure for a show. Now, the risk is that this is a very hard form to pull off. Like, it relies entirely on being a really established persona, because this is kind of like a TED Talk without a live audience. And you'd also have to ask, like, why would someone listen to you? This is something that you'll need to establish somewhere in the show or over time or as part of your overall marketing plan. But if you nail this kind of format, this is a really effective way to build an audience as a topic authority if you want to be one. And that's because you are the only person, or you're the best person to listen to about that topic. You aren't getting those hot takes from anyone else. Have to go to your show for them. The focus on this kind of structure is that persuasion, the persuasive argument that you're making. The host is probably stating a thesis, they're giving evidence, and they might refute the counter argument. So they present that counter argument, talk about it, refute it. Let's talk about another solo podcast structure that you might want to consider. This one is blending multiple structures together, but there's a risk involved with this one. So the great shows, the shows that pull this off, really blend these structures together, but the way they're successful is being organized and purposeful about it. You want to make a very clear and repeatable structure. You can get creative and you can make something new or more unique out there, and this could be a huge advantage because it's a crowded space everywhere online and in podcasts. But your thing would be new and unique and different, and this is good. So to figure out what this is, you want to customize it to your own unique skills. This is where you can find an advantage. For example, say you're really good at sound design and you were on the debate team. You made it your entire personality. You can use those things together well. It's challenging to figure out what it is. This is going to take more skill and more thought and some creativity. It might take more time, and it will probably take a lot more testing with your audience, playing around with things and seeing what works and what doesn't. But it comes with that payoff when you nail the right thing for your audience. The work will pay off. So I think an example of this is sort of style as Malcolm Gladwell's Revisionist History and like Radio Lab, perhaps. These shows kind of use a storyteller function along with something like a commentator or pundit, like they're making persuasive arguments, or they might highlight investigative journalism and have that narrative storytelling around it. They use that narrative structure to build their thesis on the given topic. They're also using like sound clips and experts, sound design, and more. And they wrap that narrative story around. So what are some of the things to watch out for when you're doing this? And this is really when it comes down to mismatching some of the elements that don't work well together. You're creating a dissonance when you do that to your listener's mind. Like a mistake, for example, might be using like the cold open, the Storyteller, or what ends up being like a how-to teacher show. Like this is something that would confuse the listener. They wouldn't expect it, but not in a good way. Sometimes it might work out, but other times it might be confusing. So this is where you want to watch out for things and test. So it can be good to work on one single format and structure, have it in place, make it clear and useful and appealing, whatever it is. And then after you're getting used to it and you've established something, you can try some very small experiments, try new things in very calculated ways, test those things, get some feedback, and then move on from there. So we've covered the three primary structures today: storyteller, teacher, and commentator. And what you're taking away is that working within these structured formats really helps your creativity, because creativity comes from limitations like these. Like the format is just a scaffolding that's going to allow you to hold the attention while being that solo single voice on your show. So let me know about some of your favorite solo hosted shows in the comments, or one that you're doing already. I'd love love to see them there. I'm always looking for new shows to download and check out. So I'll be back here soon for the next episode. Watch for that or listen to some of the other ones from this show. This show is available wherever you get podcasts if you want to listen to it as a podcast. And if you are listening to it as a podcast already, you can also find it on YouTube. You can learn more about this show or get in touch with me if you want to chat at stereoforest.com. Bye for now.